90 minutes from week 11 kicking off. Ravens at, the Bengals at the Ravens. It is Thursday Night Football. This is your pregame show. Let's get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yes. This is the Dynasty Gambit. I am your host, Gator J. As always, you can find me over there on Twitter at FantasyJ77. I am also joined by my faithful co-host, Brian at Vandygrad92 on Twitter and Steven at Target Shares over there on Twitter. Brian, you missed us last week. Had some personal stuff going on. Hope everything is good there. Outside of that, how was your fantasy week?
Gator wound up being better than my personal life, to be honest. Sometimes all you can do to avoid crying is laugh.
That is true.
But in my fantasy life, I was 7-2, and in my homeboys league, which is the one I really pay most attention to, I had I was 4-5 going in. I got a pretty good team, but I had Tua, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, Kyron Williams, all on bye and or injury, depending on how you want to look at it. Plus midweek, Nico and also T. Higgins both went out. So I had you start 9 players, and I had an exactly 9-man roster. So but I won 131-93, and in that league, 115 points is pretty amazing. So I had my stars were Trey McBride, Noah Brown, Najee Harris, Geno Smith. So.
Yeah, that Noah Brown, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that here shortly, but I mean, Noah Brown, 150 plus yards in back-to-back games. That Houston offense is clicking on all cylinders. Steven, how was your week, sir?
Week was good. A much better week in my home league this week compared to the previous week. Arthur Smith finally decided to give the ball to Bijan, which was much appreciated.
You called that last week, by the way. You did call that.
Yeah.
The shaving of the mustache.
Shaved the mustache.
Thank you for fantasy managers everywhere should be going and following at Target Shares right now, just because he did call this last week.
Thank goodness. Mostly just for my own sanity, I think I called it. Olave got involved, but he just needed Derek Carr to go away just for a little bit. Hopefully he's healthy. We don't root for injuries, but Jameis coming in was a huge boost for Chris Olave, and then the Chargers went off even in a loss. Herbert and Keenan destroyed. So
yeah, and hello, Quentin Johnson. Welcome to the NFL. First touchdown. Give him a little bit of credit. I love you. Thank you finally for catching a touchdown.
How about that throw to Jalen Guyton too? Did you see that one from Herbert that he just on an absolute rope between two defenders? That was fun.
Okay, what was the better throw? That throw or the Jameis across the field to AT?
That Jameis throw was good. I don't know. I have affinity for the Herbert one just because that scored me fantasy points.
Right. But did you hear somebody interviewed Jameis, and I wish I could give him credit, but somebody interviewed Jameis after the game, and they were asking about that throw, and Jameis says, "Look, he'd been wanting a touchdown all year long. I figured I'd give him an opportunity." and look, it was a 50-50, maybe it was a 40-30 ball or 40-70 ball, whatever, right. 40-60. And A.T. Perry came down with it. So
yeah.
Great job on them. Well, real quick, before we get too far into it, I do know this is the last week of Scott Fish Bowl, or at least the regular season of Scott Fish Bowl. I am, unfortunately, out of the playoffs at this point. It was a fun tournament 2 years in a row. Enjoyed the heck out of it. Brian, how does your Scott Fish Bowl looking right now?
Oh, man, you don't want to know the truth.
Okay.
I didn't get into Scott Fish Bowl this year. I was in I played on one of the little satellite tournaments on our
Underdog.
Yeah, well, no, on well, I don't know why I'm having such a hard time thinking, but
words.
but our other fantasy platform that we all use and enjoy playing. But I was in that, and I'm in fourth. So
Okay.
Nice.
Okay. Steve, how are you looking in fishbowl?
So I have the most points against in my league, but at this moment I should get in on points. So I won't get in on record, but I should get a spot based off points. My team's good. It's actually tons of injuries this season, but still, the combination of Eckler, Kenneth Walker, and ETN, I have all three of those guys, along with Dak absolutely balling recently, should be hopefully enough to get me in.
Yeah, and I will go ahead and put this out there that Scott Fishbowl 14 next year. The registration is already open. Go to scottfishbowl.com and at least go and register or sign up for it now. Listen, it is so much fun. I was actually on a show last night with Scott Porter from Friday Night Lights fame. Dude is phenomenal. Knows more about fantasy football than you would think any actor does. And he's a great. He's got some great stories to go with it as well. So definitely, you never know who you're going to end up in a league with.
That's cool.
Or who you will be absolutely getting a chance to talk to. Let's get into the Week 10 stock up, stock down. Steven, let's start with you. Who was your stock up for Week 10?
It's a player that I've really liked for a long time, and I'm excited to actually see him get some more opportunities. It's Jaylen Warren, Steelers running back. It seems like he was announced as a starter. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but hopefully he gets a little bit more opportunity over Najee moving forward. He's both a really efficient rusher. He's 5th in the league in rushing yards over expected per attempt. And he's a fantastic receiving back too. He's 7th in the ESPN Analytics receiver rating that I really like. So he's really talented running the ball, really talented catching the ball. I don't really believe in the Steelers. Sorry, Brian. Their 6-3 records a little bit fraudulent, especially because they've been outgained every game this season so far, which is pretty crazy. But I do really like Jaylen Warren. Excited to see what he can do.
How crazy is it? The flip, like Minnesota last year was like 7-1 in one score games, and then Pittsburgh is what, 6-0, something like that in one score games. So I find that to be very, very interesting. Side noted there. I don't like your Warren take, to be quite honest. I have enough Najee shares that I do not like that. So I am banning you from the show, and this is how we ban people from the show. Brian, it's just you and me tonight. No, you listen. When he got named the starter, I thought, oh Lord, there goes all of my Najee shares.
And
But
Najee's been better this year. He hasn't been bad. I mean, I think he's been sort of average on the rushing, average on the receiving. So he's not having a bad season. Just Warren is playing really well.
And he deserves the playing time. I mean, for the amount or for the work that he's put in, Warren deserves the playing time. Don't get me wrong. I see you, Jamie. Welcome to the show. Appreciate you hopping in here. Brian, who was your stock up for Week 10?
Well, first of all, I've got to make a couple corrections, and I think that's important. The app I was looking for a while ago with Scott Fishbowl is the Sleeper app. I was asleep on that app, but yeah,
aptly named.
I'm playing Scott Fishbowl through Sleeper, and had a good time with that. But then also the Jaylen Warren news. Actually, even though it just leaked out on Monday, he was named the starter prior to the Green Bay game. So I don't anticipate a lot of big role changes moving forward. I think in that offense, they're both going to get plenty of touches. So I think it's great for Warren. I think he definitely deserves it, but I don't anticipate it being a lot different this week than last. They're both going to get their chances. The only thing that sucks is a really tough defense.
Yeah, I was just fixing to bring that up. The one thing that would be hesitant to start either one of them this week would mainly be because of the Browns rush D. Now, there's, I guess, the difference in Najee Harris for some reason is not getting the pass attempts this year or the targets this year, whereas Warren seems to be getting a few more of the targets. And that could be where Warren.
I mean, Pickett only had like 120 passing yards last week. There was
Najee
8.
has had 13 receptions in the last 3 or 4 weeks. So
That's interesting. Yeah, I was wondering because there was only 8 targets to Deontay and to Pickens total last week. I'm like, who's getting the targets? Fryermuth's out. Like,
yeah,
Well, there's the thing, and I'll throw this stat at you real quick as we're still talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers real quick. When you look at for the year, Najee's received 25 targets. Warren's got 39.
wow.
There's a huge gap when it comes to those two when it as far as targets.
yeah. The sad thing is, the first 5 weeks he had 5 receptions total. In the last few weeks, he's actually done better. So don't sell Najee just yet. They both got to roll. So that's all I'd put out there.
One more interesting stat is overall they are running back 28 and 29.
That makes sense.
They're both low in RB2s, but they're still worth having on your bench. But I guess I should go to mine. My stock up is none other than CeeDee Lamb. I don't think there's been anybody been more impressive the last 3 weeks than 33 or 34 catches, 500 yards, and I believe 3 touchdowns. And of course, along with him, you got to bring the one that's been throwing in the ball, Dak Prescott. So those guys deserve a shout out.
Yeah, I think the stock up ultimately for fantasy, for me anyway, is Dak Prescott. You look at his last 3 games, he's over 300 yards passing in all of those games, over 400 this past week, albeit against a abysmal New York Giants defense. The issue I have, and I saw this meme go around, I think it's probably the greatest meme I've ever seen. And it's a birthday party where there's a bunch of adults standing there and they're passing out slices of cake and they're labeled as players. One of them is Brendan Cooks. One of them is, Tony Pollard. One of them is, Michael Gallup and blah, blah, blah. And even Rico Dowd was there and they're passing the cake. And of course, Tony Pollard holds onto the cake and the lady looks at him and goes, "Pass the cake." Because the cakes are little touchdowns.
Yeah.
And Tony Pollard is the only one that didn't get a touchdown last week, it seemed like. Because even Dak Prescott got a rushing touchdown last week.
No, he had at least 1, maybe 2 goal line carries, too, that I saw from Pollard and didn't convert on them. Man.
Yeah, big shout out for the Dallas Cowboys. Big week last week. Maybe a true get-right week for that passing offense. As a whole. Steven, let's get to the stock down. Brian, who is yours this week?
My stock down, I mean, he doesn't have to be completely stock down in PPR leagues. He's still got a floor, but DJ Moore is my stock down. I believe it was weeks 4 and 5. He had a combined like 350 yards and 4 touchdowns, but since then he's failed to pass the 60-yard receiving mark. And has 0 touchdowns across the last 5 games. So, like I said, in PPR right now, he still has value. The big question will be with Justin Fields coming back, what does that value look like? I'm kind of curious if it's improved, but here lately, his stock deserves.
I don't disagree with the stock being down a little bit, but I do think there is a plateau for it. Because of the Justin Fields coming back this week. I do think that is going to be right back up on the incline for DJ Moore. Steven, stock down for you.
Yeah, before just a quick comment on that too. Just Tyson Bagent's ADOT is the lowest in the league. So that's always going to hurt DJ Moore. I think when you get Fields back, you get a little bit deeper passes and hope some of those hit like earlier in the season. So, but yeah, stock down. We were just talking about him with Tony Pollard. I think I brought him up. I don't know if he was only stock down last week or the week before or the week before that. He really could be the stock down every single one of those weeks. It's been frustrating. Yeah. And so I actually looked into, I thought maybe some of the difficulty he's been having is how he's being used. And I really can't blame the coaching staff that much when you actually dig into like the EPA numbers by run gap. So the blocking's been a little bit worse this season. His rushing yards before contact down 0.2 yards. That's significant, and that's mostly on the offensive line. But rushing yards after contact per attempt down 1.1 yards, which is massive per attempt. I mean, absolutely massive decrease. And they've been giving him a higher percentage of his carries up the middle, which I thought maybe get him to the outside. But he's actually been most efficient up the middle. He was most efficient last year up the middle, most efficient this year up the middle, which was interesting to me. And he's been atrocious on anything to the outside from an EPA metric this season. Pretty small sample, but really, really bad. I was kind of hoping I'd feel better about it after looking into it, and I feel worse. But great matchup against Carolina this weekend. If it's not now, then I don't know when it's going to happen.
One thing I'd like to throw in here that I don't think they've done nearly as good a job at this year as last was a little dump down passes. He was used pretty heavily out of the backfield last year on short dump downs.
Catch last week, right? I think he 15 carries, like 50 yards, no receptions.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know the numbers on the year, but yeah, it's not been.
When you compare his numbers this year to last year, there is a huge drop off, and I think this is the Ezekiel Elliott effect, or having a significant back to help him. When you look at what he did last year on 193 attempts, over 1,000 yards, right? You look at what he's got going on this year, 135 attempts already through 9 games and only 529 yards. The other side of that coin is, like you just brought up, he had 55 targets last year. He's already gotten 35 targets this year, and it just doesn't seem like it is.
It doesn't feel like it. Yeah, it really doesn't.
So he's on pace for more targets, but he's also on pace for more rushing attempts and way less yardage.
You wonder if it's injury too. I mean, I know he's coming back from being hurt, and he just doesn't seem like the same player. And so you just wonder if that's part of it too, in addition to maybe some of the Zeke effect. But is he fully healthy?
I tell you, the one thing that stands out to me as soon as I look at these numbers is Jamal Williams, right? We look at Jamal Williams last year, and what was a standout thing for Jamal Williams was the touchdowns.
Yeah.
Last year he had 9. This year he's only got 2. I'm sorry. Last year he had 12 total. This year he has 2 total.
And the frustrating thing with that too is you can look at some like expectations, like given his role, how many touchdowns in quotes should he have? Mm-hmm. And it's 9. He should have 9 and he has 2. And so that's really frustrating as a fantasy manager too. You're like, given his role, he should have a lot more, but he's not converting on them for whatever reason.
Well, let's dive into this.
Maybe they start Rico Dowdle and bring him in relief. I mean, that's the answer.
Just turn Rico into Zeke and then let Pollard be Pollard.
Exactly.
Here's a crazy thing for you. Pollard had 69% of the snap share, 15 rushes last week against the Giants. Rico Dowdle had 28% and 12.
Yeah, Rico's been better. That's the annoying thing too, is that I can objectively look at it and see that like Rico's been the better running back. You just hope it gets better for Pollard, but
RB 20 on the year for somebody that was probably in most leagues, especially in redraft, was taken in the late first, second round, somewhere in that range as far as running backs go.
What's annoying about the touchdowns too, because if he had 6, he'd be an RB1.
Yep.
And that's actually even lower than his expectation. That's all he would need to get to the RB1. And so, yeah.
And a lot of that is because of the injuries to the running backs that we have this year, but it's still like the expectation is to be better.
Yeah.
And it's just not. So he's almost, and I hate to do this to him, but I'm going to put him in that same little ball that we put Russell Wilson in last year. And that's kind of that's kind of where he's at. So let's get to Jamie's question right here. Stroud or Murray for Dynasty going forward? Who's the better quarterback this week playing each other? They're not playing each other, are they? Are they playing each other this week?
They are.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Sorry, Jamie, you were right.
I'm going with Stroud. He's a home quarterback, 5-point favorite, which Vegas knows a little bit more than me. So I'm going to go with Stroud. And moving forward, I'm still going with Stroud.
Yeah, Stroud's just been so incredibly fun. I would also go with Stroud. I mean, for fantasy, it's tougher because we actually did see some of that rushing from Murray, which was unexpected for me coming off of the injury. But Stroud's just been, I think he's already one of the best quarterbacks in the league, which is crazy because just, a few games under his belt. But yeah, I think I'd go Stroud too.
And in Dynasty, you've got a few years age difference too. So
Well, yeah, it's. I think at this point it is. Stroud has shown, being in the MVP talk, of course, being in the Rookie of the Year talk.
Yeah, I think he's got that locked. Isn't like minus 2,000 him Rookie of the Year
Yeah,
now? I mean,
it's
like,
insane.
done. Yeah, it's done.
It is absolutely insane. And of course, when you look at what Stroud is doing with the weapons that he has, he's got young weapons as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then now you got Murray, who they don't have the weapons. They got Hollywood, but then they got Wilson.
McBride's not so bad. I like
well, no,
Trey-
I'm yeah, but I'm just talking about on the
Yeah.
outside. I'm not
Yeah,
necessarily. I mean, Stroud's got Schultz.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather have Schultz over McBride. But that's what I for this year. But when you're looking at
I think I'd still pick McBride. I don't know. Maybe I'm down. I'm too down on Schultz. But I really like Trey McBride. I think he's actually pretty good.
I'm agreeing with Steven on this one. I'm sorry, Gator.
No, that's a fair argument. It's a fair argument. We can have that argument on another day. But when you look at the numbers right now, look, Schultz is not a bad tight end. He did it in Dallas. He's doing it in Houston. He's proven that, we talk about these wide receivers that are quarterback proof. Listen, this guy did it with Dak Prescott, a veteran. He's doing it with a rookie in Stroud. So, but when you look at the outside weapons, the chemistry that Stroud has with his weapons already is absurd.
Crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So
and
give me Stroud.
To just like how efficient he is throwing deep passes over the middle to both Dell and to Nico Collins. And then you kind of can compare that to someone like Trevor Lawrence, who isn't doing that at all. If you look at Trevor Lawrence's passes, it's all these really difficult passes to the outside that aren't converting to Calvin Ridley. He's doing like the exact opposite of what Stroud is.
Brian, this is fiction to be a you and me conversation. I'm about to boot him one more again because he keeps going after my players.
I don't even know that that's Lawrence's fault.
And I'm guessing Trevor Lawrence on this one.
Yes, but what's the problem is that it's not that he talks about him, it's that he's so truthful about it. Just quit telling me something I already know.
I think I blame the coaching staff a little bit more for Lawrence.
Yes. We're talking about Trevor Lawrence.
I think
are we talking about Trevor Lawrence? I just dropped him in a league, so.
Ooh. Well, was it like redraft single QB?
It's kind of an interesting one. Here with it going for 2, we had an 18-teamer that basically it's almost like
I'm in that league with you.
Huh?
We're in that league together on that one.
Yeah. So. So in that one, I already had 2 in Joe Burrow, and you can only start one quarterback. So I dropped him.
That makes sense.
He just hasn't been that great. I thought somebody would pay, but that didn't happen either. So.
Well, let's get into week 11. Week 11, the bye weeks this week: Atlanta Falcons, Indianapolis Colts, the New England Patriots, and the New Orleans Saints. But week 11 starts tonight. Bengals at the Ravens. Like I said, over under of 46. Ravens are favored by 3.5. This was as of yesterday at 6 p.m. I believe those numbers still exist exactly as they are. Brian, who is out tonight on the injury report?
You're going to have to help me a little bit, but the important name here is T. Higgins. That's the only fantasy relevant player that is out, but we do have a couple of other names on our list that I put down.
Yeah, you've got left tackle Ronnie Staley is out, and then probably maybe not fantasy relevant as far as offensive, but for the defensive side, I do believe it is fantasy relevant that Marlon Humphreys, I believe, is going to be out as well. And what that does for the Ravens secondary is hurting them, in my opinion. That's going to allow Jamar Chase to run rampant in that secondary. And if that offensive line for the Bengals can hold up and give just, that extra half second for Burrow to see Chase Flash, it could be a long day for that secondary. You disagree with that, Steven?
They've just been so good all season. I just wonder. I think the best coach. I think the best coaches that are coaching tonight are the defensive coordinators for both teams, and so I think that the Ravens can still overcome the Marlon Humphrey injury. I think it's big, but I really like the Ravens back end. I really like their linebackers and their secondary, even with Humphrey hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know if Burrow, the expectations are so high given how amazing he's been the last couple of weeks. I don't think he's going to be able to hit those expectations. He can do really well, just not throwing 380 yards is still really impressive, I think the Ravens secondary is probably going to be okay. That's just a gut feeling.
Let's dive into the news and notes for tonight. Steven, what are your news and notes? I'll bring up your graph right here.
Yeah, so the graph that you're looking at, the x-axis is pass rate over expectation. So if you're not familiar with that, it's basically how often a team passes over what you would expect they would pass in a given situation. So it takes into account how many points they're down or up, the down, the distance, stuff like that. And it gives an expectation for how often they would pass. And then this is either they're above that or below that. And so why... And just to talk about the y-axis too, that's week-to-week fluctuations. So basically, it's how consistent is the team in passing more or less over expectation, or do they change a lot each week? And so I kind of added the annotations in each quadrant. Why I'm bringing this up tonight is because you can see the Bengals all the way in the top right. So the Bengals lead the league in pass rate over expectation. And if anything, this is for the whole season. This is understating what they've actually been over the last 5 weeks since Burrow's been healthy. They haven't been below 11%, which is the far right to the graph in any of the last 5 weeks. They are passing. They are consistent in passing well above what a normal team would do in their situations. And they've been consistent in the past 5 weeks doing that. Alternatively, the Ravens are right in the middle of the graph. They are pretty much neutral. They will pass at the exact same rate as you would expect a team in that situation, and they don't really change more or less than any other given team. But I think the interesting thing is the Bengals for tonight, just especially when you're looking at like Burrow pass attempts, stuff like that. The Bengals are going to pass a ton.
Doesn't that seem a little... It seems like the Ravens should be over where the Falcons are at, or at least in the mind of a fan.
Yeah, I think and maybe that is a little biased towards previous years where they've been there. But then this year, with the Monken offense, they've actually been passing a good amount more. I think what's also really interesting is you might be thinking they score all the touchdowns on the ground, and they have. And that's why Lamar's been kind of tough from a fantasy perspective the last couple of weeks, is because they have this outsized share of their touchdowns coming from the ground. But I still think that regresses because it's so skewed towards rushing touchdowns recently that I think you're going to start seeing a few more passing touchdowns than we have recently.
Brian, any comments on Steven's graph here? I love the layout of this, by the way.
Me too. No, I mean, one thing I think it indicates to me is just the fact that the Bengals, even against a really tough matchup, should be very pretty much pass heavy tonight, I believe. But I think it's a tough read overall in regards to tonight's game, because the one thing we got to think about is that Burrow was injured for the first few games of the year. And so getting a feel against a really good Ravens defense, for me, it proved to be one of the challenges of any Thursday night, but that's just me in particular.
You would think if they're going to attack, if they were a team that is willing to change up their approach, like the Lions or the Eagles are, where you can see them, like based off their opponent, decide to pass more or pass less. The Bengals just aren't that team. I think they're going to see this really tough passing defense in the Ravens and say, I don't care. I'm going to pass a ton anyway, because that's what we do. We pass a ton. I don't see them changing their approach. They've been recently really consistent with it.
And the names don't even seem to matter. I mean, because T. Higgins is out, but Tyler Boyd and Irvin stepped up last week. So, You know, I mean, it doesn't seem to matter who they're playing against or who's playing for them.
Yeah, I don't think they care.
They don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care. They don't care. They don't care. Real quick, I just want to do a quick update. The line has actually changed, and I don't know why, other than possibly a little bit of money on it. It is now at 4.
Is
Going
it still
towards-
46?
It is still at 46, but the number, you know, the over of the spread has changed to 4 for the Ravens. Brian, what are your news and notes for tonight's game?
Well, I mean, the big thing for me that's everybody should keep in mind, good speaking, in favorable match, a lot of like favorable match target, but the Ravens are good. It doesn't matter whether it's quarterback, running back, tight end. Points given team has been there's 12th fewest at one position. Everything else are that they do well against, and they're one of him as like kind of the key player of the game. They're the third most fantasy points to tight ends. So they here for Baltimore, and sometimes they have. I see it being more of a Mark Andrews game than a Zay Flowers game.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna disagree with you because and you'll know why later on when we get into the Chrome Dome Parlay of the night. But no, I look with the Bengals giving up the most or the third most fantasy points to tight ends. The Ravens also give up the least. Not that that's going to matter tonight to tight ends. I think that's a great point to bring up. This could very well be a great Mark Andrews night. So if you have Mark Andrews, not that you were sitting him, but make sure he's in your lineup somewhere. Hopefully he's going to be in your tight end position, of course, because it is Thursday. PSA, get all of your Thursday night players into their respective positions and out of your flex. That gives you a little bit of movement coming for Sunday and, of course, Monday. All right, so we've talked about the news, the notes, what you thought about of these teams going into the game. Steven, how do you see this game playing out with the Ravens and the Bengals, the Bengals?
So it's interesting that the money's going towards the Ravens. I kind of agree with that. So the Ravens, they have the most efficient rushing offense in the entire league. And the Bengals defense is bottom 5 in stopping the run. So I think we see a healthy dose of Ravens rushing tonight and efficient rushing at that. And hopefully some Keaton Mitchell. I know that we're all on board with that too. Bengals offense average on the season, but again, you kind of have to do some splits with when Burrow was hurt and Burrow's healthy. Since he's been healthy, they've been top 7, both running the ball and passing. So Bengals offense is fine. Like we mentioned, they're going to pass a ton. They're seeing this really tough Ravens secondary, and they're going to pass a ton anyway. I don't think they care. I think one interesting thing is Burrow is bottom 3 in the league in air yards per pass attempt. He doesn't really throw the ball deep, and he's completing passes just a bit more than expected. Though with the splits, he's been a lot better over those past 3 weeks. This Ravens defense, even without Marlon Humphreys, I think they still get the better of the Bengals a bit. I think we could still see a ton of pass attempts from Burrow, like 38 plus. But I still think the Ravens win the game. I'll take a slight under and say 24-21 Ravens with some really efficient rushing on their part.
Brian?
Well, I don't want to give too many Chrome Dome takeaways, but I will say that I would not touch the over/under at all. I feel like that number is right, but I agree with Steven. I'm on the Ravens side, and I'll explain later how much on the Ravens side I am. But like I said, that over/under just kind of, I don't know, it doesn't stick out great to me. And even with Steven's number of 45 versus 46, it doesn't seem blatantly obvious.
I'm not betting on the over/under either. Yeah, I don't feel great about it.
But from a fantasy perspective, like I said, Mark from a DFS perspective, Mark Andrews is my captain tonight. I feel like there's a great matchup. For the Bengals, the only one I had to have in the lineup was Jamar Chase. I mean, I don't feel that comfortable with Mixon having a big game, and everybody else for the Bengals is kind of a no-name, which somebody will do well, but they're no-names. And then I wound up getting Lamar's price tag in there in the Baltimore defense. And then Steven will have to help me here, but I chose the one tight end that he likes here in a little bit. What is
Tanner Hudson? Is that who you're leaning towards? Yeah.
Yeah, I took Tanner Hudson for a cheap play. And then the biggest question, I'd love for y'all to answer this. I think based on what I'm hearing, y'all would go with Zay Flowers over Gus Edwards. They're both affordable and both can be fit in your lineup. So
I think it just depends. How confident are you on Keaton Mitchell getting those snaps? I think Gus Edwards is pretty good and he's been really efficient. This rushing offense has been really, really efficient too. Does Keaton Mitchell get a larger snap share? Because that would be fun. But if he does, it takes away some Gus Edwards stuff other than the goal line work, which I think he keeps.
Yeah, for me, it's Zay Flowers. And I'm putting him in because I do believe that not only does Keaton Mitchell get a little bit more, I mean, the coaching staff said they needed to get him more opportunity. Yeah, but the other side of that coin is when you look at the overall targets on the year, if I sat there and said, these are the players, Mark Andrews is included in this, as far as targets, you would absolutely 99% of the time say, well, Mark Andrews is getting most of these targets. You realize Zay Flowers is absolutely 9 more targets than Mark Andrews on the year. The only thing he doesn't have is the touchdowns.
Yeah.
Right? He's got that 1 touchdown against Tennessee back in week 6. And that was in England, if I'm not mistaken.
Can't remember.
Yeah. He hasn't scored on U.S. soil yet in the NFL. But that could change, and it probably will change very, very soon. So for me, it's Zay Flowers that I would be putting in, especially when on a DFS lineup. Because when you look at his targets, take out the week 9 matchup of against Seattle, his minimal targets is 6 from week 5 to week 10, and he's catching just about everything.
I think his underdog line was 4 receptions too, which I liked, and I still like, especially since they've moved Andrews up from 4 to 5 over the past day. So I think for Flowers, he can do this, and I think maybe the Ravens are recognizing now. But early in the season, they were just giving these really, really short depth of target, these kind of like screen passes, like flat routes. He can win down the field. Give him some of those targets, and he wins. And I'm hoping that they start realizing that too, because that's how you really get the yardage from Flowers.
Yeah, his yards per attempt at the beginning of the year was like 7.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's already up to 8
because it was all yak. Because it's just him like being awesome in space from the line of scrimmage. But he can win down the field like a typical receiver. He's not.
Yep.
He's not Kadarius Toney. I think he's a little better.
Kind of reminds you a lot of an Njigba at the beginning of the season versus now. So.
And actually, Jay said they still aren't really throwing him the ball down the field. Give him. I think he obviously is fantastic too, but they're not. I don't think they're using him the right way yet.
Let's dive into a couple of these questions real quick that are in the chat. Jamie says Bengals allow the 12th most points per game to the wide receiver. Only 30% of those points are to the slot. So he likes Flowers and OBJ on the over. Just give you a real quick. I want to get over to the receiving prop and give you Zay's Flowers over under is sitting right now at 51.5. That has come down.
Wow.
OBJ's at 25.5.
Concerns for OBJ. I'm curious what you guys think. He is really a part-time player now. They've been playing Bateman, at least last week, a lot more over him. I would just be slightly worried about OBJ just not seeing the field enough to hit whatever, just to get enough yards. Like they've really been playing Bateman over him.
I mean, it's for me, it's hard to sit there and go, you can't play OBJ at 25.5.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's a
when
low.
He gets 1 reception and it's for 40.
That's
a low number. Yeah.
total's so low that you think he'll hit it. I would rather take the Flowers lean,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, I could see both of them hitting it. But because, like I said, it's just so low. But
if it's still 4 receptions for Flowers, I actually like that. I'm
Yeah.
surprised I assume that hasn't gone up because the yardage went down. So
Yeah, I just noticed that when I pulled it up that it had dropped that far down. Nathan's got one for us here. Worried about playing Mixon against the Ravens tonight. Should I play him tonight or play Brees Hall, James Cook, or Kareem Hunt? So here's the first question. Is it Mixon, Brees Hall, James Cook, Kareem Hunt? He's also worried about the Jets not being able to score much with playing Hall.
And I'm guessing, what was that about Hall now?
He's worried about the Jets not being able to score with him playing Brees Hall. Give you a quick who are the Jets playing this week is the Buffalo Bills.
yeah, they could be down big
At Buffalo.
Sounds like a pick.
And this is a standard league, by the way. This is a standard league.
Sounds like a pick one. I'm still going Brees Hall.
Okay. Brees Hall for you. Is it Mixon, James Cook, Brees Hall, Kareem Hunt for you, Steve?
I think I'd go Mixon. I have those same concerns with Hall. I love Brees Hall, the player. I'm like one of the biggest Brees Hall fans that I know, but just that offense is rough. I don't think I would start Kareem Hunt without Deshaun Watson. That offense really, really tanks too. James Cook, I just don't think they're going to need him because they're probably going to run with like Latavius Murray when they're up by 20, and they don't need to pass the ball to James Cook. So I think I go Mixon.
Jets pretty good against the run too. So to me, it's a either Hall or Mixon. I mean, I don't like the other two.
Agreed there.
Yeah, no, I think I'm right there with you, Brian, on that. It's Mixon for me, but Hall is the second because here's the thing with Brees Hall, he is basically with Zach Wilson at the helm. He is basically the only thing they have to key on.
Yep.
They can cover, Buffalo can cover whoever else they want to throw out there as far as wide receivers, whether that's Garrett Wilson, whatever the guys are that came from Green Bay over with Aaron Rodgers that thought, Alan Lazard. It just doesn't matter. Brees Hall is the one guy that they have to stop. That would be my concern there. So it would be Mixon tonight with a tempered expectation of I'm not expecting more than like 7, 8, 10 points at the most from Mixon. But I don't know that you're going to get 7, 8, 10 points from Brees Hall.
That's
Brees Hall is at any moment could break a 70-yard touchdown run. It's just he's been doing that a lot, and you just worry about the stability of that on that terrible offense.
One of the other things that I will bring up about Mixon, we haven't seen it this year, but there is that one game every single year, it seems like.
Yeah. It's not going to be tonight.
Not saying it's going to be tonight. But we haven't seen it through the first 10 weeks. There ain't that many weeks left there, Brian.
Yep.
It's going to happen soon.
Very Nostradamus, but you're picking a really tough spot.
Whoa, how dare you hurt that man's name with my name in it.
It's just a really tough spot for him, I think. But he just like any other standard league player, he's dependent on a touchdown tonight. I don't see the yardage for him. So.
But I would say the same thing with Brees Hall as well. Brees Hall, James Cook, Kareem Hunt, they're all touchdown dependent. Like Steve said though, Brees Hall could break one, James Cook could break one.
Yep.
But it's a complete crapshoot with all of those. Nathan, hope that helps. Sorry.
Hey, you got about a 3. That's pretty good. So.
Who is one player from each team to keep an eye on tonight? Brian, I'll start with you. Who's the one player from the Bengals that you are looking to keep an eye on tonight?
I chose 2 with Higgins out.
Of course you did. You can't follow rules.
No, I don't ever follow rules. What's the purpose of rules? Is my question.
To break them.
Last week we saw an interesting pass distribution between the secondary receivers, Ehrman and Boyd. So those are my 2. I'm kind of curious how they break down tonight. I know Ehrman had a touchdown. I know Boyd had good yardage, but I don't think he scored. But be interesting to see how they break that down.
Steven, who is the one player? And I said one player.
Like Brian can break the rules. I feel like I can
Brian
break the rules too.
Brian can break the rules. I'm breaking the rules. Who is your player or players to watch for the Bengals tonight?
All of the tight ends. Brian already kind of brought them up. They've actually been playing pretty much just evenly. It's Tanner Hudson, Herb Smith, and Drew Sample. Pretty much like a third of the snaps for each of them. The fantasy relevant, at least recently, of them is Tanner Hudson. He had 5 targets 2 weeks ago, 7 targets last week. But you just wonder, it's not really stable unless he can start consolidating some of the snaps. But you wonder if that maybe starts tonight. He's getting the targets. Herb Smith has been a huge disappointment all season, really, for the Bengals. So do wonder if we start seeing some consolidation for Hudson tonight or not.
One thing I would just correct: Irv Smith has been a huge disappointment for his entire career, regardless.
Not just this season.
Jesus. Ray Lewis is in the house there tonight, by the way.
Nice.
Jake Torres got this question for us. If you don't mind answering this question, pick 2. PPR League. Keaton Mitchell, Pacheco versus the Eagles, or Noah Brown? Start with you, Steve.
Brown has missed practice yesterday, so I've got to sit Noah Brown and go the other 2 at this point in time, although it really pains me.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Unfortunately, we can't have fun things like Noah Brown. I don't think he's going to play. So with that in mind, I would get Keaton Mitchell in if those are your only options tonight, because it seems unlikely that Noah Brown's going to play, which is unfortunate.
Well, the unfortunate thing is he could practice tomorrow and play the weekend, but you have to make your decision tonight.
You have to make a call tonight. The tea leaves seem pessimistic.
Here's the thing, though. This is Thursday Night Football, so Keaton Mitchell's definitely in the lineup. We have to have him in the lineup. There's no way you can sit him, in my opinion. The way that Harbaugh is talking about, wanting to get him more touches, whether that's, on the ground or in the air, go get Keaton Mitchell in your lineup. Keep an eye on the practice report for tomorrow for Noah Brown. I mean, 150 plus yards over the last 2 weeks. We don't know if Nico Collins is going to play this weekend as well. There's something interesting happening there in Texas. Pacheco is an easy one. That's Monday. So we don't have to worry about that till Monday. So you still have that option. Keaton Mitchell goes in the lineup. I would go ahead and put Noah Brown in the lineup right now and then wait. If you don't hear something positive with Noah Brown by Sunday morning before kickoff, pull Noah Brown out, put Pacheco in. That's how I would handle that. Guys,
I will say
agree with that?
Yeah, agreed there. I will say the Eagles are kind of a pass funnel defense. Their secondary's terrible. Their defensive front is fantastic. So really tough matchup for Pacheco. You're kind of just hoping for touchdowns. Should be a high-scoring game.
Yeah, but if you got no Noah Brown, I mean, your only option is Pacheco at that point. Now, he does have one more question for us. Is it Dobbs or Lamar? He's got to put this in tonight as well, so it's Lamar for me.
Lamar for me, too. Yep.
Jake, I hope that helps you out there. Let's dive into the player that you're watching tonight from the Ravens. Let's start with you, Brian.
Let's see here. Gus Edwards is who I put. The last 2 weeks, he's had 16 carries total for like 80-something yards. I'm just curious if he might get a little bit more opportunity tonight. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe they go Keaton Mitchell and Edwards is completely null and void. I don't know. Be interesting to see.
Yeah, like I just talked about when you're answering Jake's question there. I truly think that they are going to make an effort to get Keaton Mitchell the ball in his hands. When you look at last week, I want to say it was like he touched the ball like 5 times total, something like that. Yeah, 5 times total, 2 through the air, 3 on the ground. The week before, he touched it 10 times, and he got a touchdown and 138 yards. Give this man the ball. Not saying that Gus Edwards is not a stud, but I do believe when it comes to Gus Edwards, you're looking for touchdowns. It's a touchdown-dependent running back.
Yeah, I think, and Keaton Mitchell's my player to watch for the Ravens. I know we've been talking about it a ton, but like agreed on all those fronts. I mean, he's 126th ranked in terms of attempts, which is so he's like doesn't get the ball, hasn't had the ball a lot this season. He's first in yards per carry. He's first in missed tackles forced per carry. He's first in 30+ yard rushing touchdowns on like no attempts. I mean, he is just kind of like Achane light so far, and maybe not even that light depending on how you're looking at it. Hopefully, Achane's back this week. I think he is.
Yes.
But let's get him the ball more. He's incredibly fun. He's obviously pretty small, which limits his. He pretty much won't have a goal line roll, almost certainly. But if he can score from 30 yards out, does he need a goal? Does he need a goal line roll? Yeah, give him the ball.
I mean, 5'8", 191. We saw what he could do. Unfortunately, it was at East Carolina, but he was athletic as hell.
Yeah,
and explosive is all get out. Very I love and I'm not saying you comped him to him, but I love the bringing up Achane at the same time because I think they are very, very comparable players outside of size. I do believe. I just want to double check this real quick because Achane 5'8" or 5'9", 188. They are exactly the same size almost.
They just that's the player who he reminds me of when you watch him. It's just like, oh man, I've seen this before. It was before Achane was hurt in Miami.
I'm asked the abrasive question of the night here, though. I believe, to me, Achane is touch limited. Even at Texas A&M, they always used him about 13 touches per game.
Yep.
Are we thinking the same thing with Keaton Mitchell, where they both are awesome with limited touches, but you better not overload him or be out for 4 to 6 weeks like Achane?
I don't disagree with that take, Brian. We talked about this a few weeks ago. You and I did when you brought this up the first time that he needs to be not so much on a snap count, but on a touch count, maybe, right? Yeah. And the problem is when you sit there and look at a guy who gets an 18% snap share, 9 carries, and 138 yards, and then the next week he comes out and gets a 24% snap share, 3 carries. I think that's the issue.
I think they're both so athletic, but I don't know. If I was the head coach, giving them too much. So.
Well, here's the other side of that coin too: is take it to the wide receiver position. Somebody else that's too small to play the position, also in Miami, Tyreek Hill. Just give the man the ball.
And even if the coaches see that, there's still room from his current role to go up and still be on a snap count. I don't think, to your point, Brian, I don't think he's ever like an 80% guy, but could he be 50-50 or even like 40-60, which is still growth from where he is? I think so. Mm-hmm.
And the other thing about Tyreek, I'm going to guess that Mitchell and Achane will both be used up the middle a little bit where you get ahead a little bit more. Tyreek was so dadgum fast and always on the outside. he avoided some of that contact.
That's true.
Well, yeah. Well, Tyreek, listen, Tyreek would not be able to play back in, the mid to late 90s when you had John Lynch and Steve Atwater and these guys coming across the middle headhunting because it was legal back then. It'd only take one hit, but that is a conversation for another day. Let's dive into the Chrome Dome parlays of the night. Steven, lead us off.
Yeah, so I got 3 for tonight. So Lamar Jackson under half a pick. The interception model that I work on has his odds at 1+ picks at 38%, which is pretty low, one of the lower on the week. Gino is actually lower than him, but so I like the under there for the pick. This line is moved. I got Mark Andrews over 4 receptions. I think it's 5 now. I probably would be willing to switch that to Zay Flowers if it's still 4. If you're looking to make the bet, 5 is a little high on Andrews for me. I really liked it at 4. And then I didn't really love a lot of the Bengals lines. I'm curious what you guys thought. I just did the Jamar Chase gets a touchdown. It was a 1.25 boost on underdog. So so Lamar Jackson under half a pick, Mark Andrews over 4 receptions, Chase gets a touchdown. If that hits, it's 7.5 times your money.
I actually like that because he is for Lamar, he's thrown the ball 30, it made 30 attempts in one game 3 times this year. 2 of those 3 times he's thrown a pick. If they can keep him in that 25 to 28 range,
That's what he's projected.
and
I think
I like
on
it.
the night. And his turnover worthy play rates kind of average with a pretty low attempt. I mean, that's really where you start seeing the interceptions is guys with obviously the higher turnover worthy play rate, but also just the more attempts. The more attempts you have, the more chances you have for a pick. Is if you keep those attempts down, then it lowers it. So,
Brian, your Chrome Dome parlay of the night.
Well, after an hour long discussion, I pivoted a little bit off of mine.
Ooh, a change.
A change? No, he plays in Miami.
I'm so overconfident. I go with everything, but so I've changed off Gus Edwards. I was over his total, but I'm going to take it away. And so, like I said earlier, the over under pick I have every week, I just don't feel. I feel like the number's just about right. So I was able to go with Ravens minus 3.5 before it hit 4. Mm-hmm. So that's where I'm going there. Also, I went with Joe Mixon under 54.5 rushing yards. Like I said, I think he'll fall into the end zone. He usually does, but I don't think it'll be a yardage game for him. My pivot was to Zay Flowers over 51.5 yards receiving, I believe is the total. And I've also got Mark Andrews over 60 yards receiving. But that being combined to 51 and 60, I'm not sure how the math works, but I do not like Lamar. So I went under 226 yards passing. So
those are the only 2 players he's throwing it ball to.
It's pretty concentrated.
So, I mean, but so you're going Zay Flowers. I'm changing it on here so we can keep track of everything. You're going to go Zay Flowers.
Yep.
Over.
Yep.
The 51.5. And you actually have Andrews at 58.5.
That's what I had him on DraftKings earlier.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So I actually I like all of those. Taking out the Gus Edwards one. I love the Joe Mixon under 54.5 rushing. I think there as a combined total, he could get to that with a few passing receptions, right? But I don't I think that 54.5 is probably right there, maximum for him.
I think so. Yeah, I think he could do more out of catching out of the backfield than rushing tonight for sure.
Yeah. Well, if y'all saw my TikTok that I put out, or that the Fantasy and Frames group put out, you saw most of my picks, the parlay for tonight. It is Joe Burrow over 225. I'm sorry, 255.5. That number has now moved all the way to 260.5 passing yards, which is quite interesting in a 24-hour period that it moved that drastically. Last 2 games, Buffalo and Houston, he hit just under 350 yards in each of those games. I don't see him getting 350, but I don't see him not getting 255, 260, somewhere in that range. Yes, I know there's no T. Higgins. I know it's going to be a lot of, Chase and Boyd and, dump downs to Mixon. But as a whole, with no Marlon Humphrey in the back, I can see a good bit of yardage for Joe Burrow there. Keaton Mitchell over 36.5. That number has also moved to 37.5. A little bit like I said in the video, this dude is just damn good. He can do 36.5. He can do 40 in a clip in one play. So, and if Harbaugh is true to his word, and it is not just coach speak, and he's going to give him more opportunity, very much like Brian getting rid of Gus Edwards off of his parlay of the night, that just means more opportunity for Keaton Mitchell. Zay Flowers, I have the over on 52.5. Like Brian was able to get it at 51.5. I would love it even more at 51.5, but I still love it at 52.5. He's Jackson's preferred target on the outside. Like I said earlier, he's got 9 more targets than even, Mark Andrews. So, and it should be, again, with no Marlon, with the Bengals backfield or secondary, it should be a good matchup for him. The one more that I added that I did not put in the video, Jamar Chase over 7 receptions. Again, this goes to not having a T. Higgins in there. They still have Tyler Boyd. Yes, they still have Trent Irwin. Burrow has already proven that he wants to get the ball to Chase. And if he can do that, he'll scramble around and he'll float it up there. Whatever Burrow has to do to get the ball to Chase, that's what he's going to do. Give me the over on 7 receptions. Target-wise, he's probably going to get 12, 13 targets tonight alone. He did it a couple weeks ago, even with a bad back. So give me those right there, and let's go make some money. Pockets. Let's go get some pocket money.
One last question for you, Gator. I believe Steven and I both took the Ravens, right, Steven?
Yep.
Who do you have, Gator?
Give me the Ravens, and I'll give the 3. I'm not giving 4.
Yeah, I think just kind of really interested to see how this game plays out. I do think we see a ton of passing attempts. And on your point about Chase, if Burrow's throwing 38 times, you're telling me a third of those aren't going to Chase? I think he's going to get who is he throwing to if it's not him? So
he's going to throw some to Boyd, of course. He's going to throw some to Irwin. And what's that guy's name? Hudson, the Tanner Hudson. He's going to get a couple targets.
I have to start Tanner Hudson in Scott Fishbowl because I have no tight end. So he's playing tonight. So
here's the hoping that Tanner Hudson gets 3 targets or 4 targets, 3 receptions, and a touchdown.
Just get him the end.
We can talk him into existence right here on the Gambit.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the Dynasty Gambit as a whole, we are talking Tanner Hudson into existence. 4 targets, 3 receptions,
20
and
yards,
the almighty touchdown.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'd take that.
So you have it tonight. We are all 3 on board with the Ravens. We would give 3, maybe 3.5, but we would not give the 4.
Yeah.
Not giving 4, Brian?
I wouldn't.
Okay.
No, I like my 3.5 I've got. I wouldn't give 4. So.
Yep. And so the Chrome Dome comes down like this. Steven took Lamar Jackson under a half of interception. Mark Andrews over 4 receptions. Chase over a touchdown with a 1.25 boost. Brian takes Lamar Jackson under 226.5 passing. Joe Mixon under 54.5 rushing. Zay Flowers over 51.5 receiving. Mark Andrews over 58.5 receiving. I took Joe Burrow over 255.5 passing. Keaton Mitchell over 36.5 rushing. Zay Flowers over 52.5 receiving. And Jamar Chase over 7 receptions. Guys, anything else you want to add tonight? I know Steven has his article that just came out, so we definitely want Steven to talk about that to let the people know what do you got going on. So we'll start with you, Brian.
Well, you can always find me at X, VandyGrad92. And then I'm doing a lot of stuff for frequency's sake. I do a DFS show on Friday nights and also the main show on Sunday at 10 o'clock in the morning. So have a lot going on there as well.
Steven, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, so article just dropped. Looked into why scoring is still down. Last week was a little bit better, but why? Just a hypothesis for why I think scoring across the NFL is down a little bit. Looked at some QB wide receiver pairs, and then talked about the interception model. Speaking of which, before Underdog takes it off again, bet Geno under half a pick. It's my favorite one of the week. Hit last week. Just keep betting it. So they took it off last week at some point. I think when it got to minus 140, I think it's minus 130 on DraftKings now. So get a bet in with that.
Make sure you're over there following at VandyGrad92. Steven over there at Target Shares. Myself at FantasyJ77. More importantly, go and follow Going for Two. Make sure you join us over there in the Discord. The way you join the Discord, which is absolutely 100% free, jump onto the website at Going for Two, www.goingfor2.com. At the bottom right-hand corner, there's a link to click on for you to join the Discord. Come join us over there. we're not that far away from having the 2,000 subscribers here on YouTube. Oh, fellas,
That's awesome.
we're right around the corner from 2,000 subs right here on YouTube. Don't forget, every night of the week there is something going on here on the YouTube channel from Monday to Sunday. Every day there's something going on. Make sure you hit that like. Make sure you hit that subscribe. Get notifications by hitting that bell so you know when Going for Two goes live with any kind of content, whether that's shorts or a live stream. Anything else you guys want to add tonight before we get into probably what is going to be the best Thursday night game, at least on paper, of the last 2 years?
No, I just wanted to say I hope those 2,000 subscribers hits during our show so we can have party hats and streamers.
That would mean we would have to get Jeff to go and buy us something.
Oh no!
And we know by the B League not having music for his show right now that ain't happening.
I got the party. You can put the party hats on me. I'll buy them. I'll mail them to you.
There we go.
I'll sponsor the party hats and the streamers and the balloons. So no worries,
guys. You might not want to say that live because if the B League is watching, oh Lord,
I'll give it to him too. I love the B League show.
No, he's gonna want you to start sponsoring segments on his show and music. And
I feel like I'm already in the comments enough on that show that I'm a part of the show anyway. So.
All right, fellas, let's get out of here. Go get your lineup set. Don't forget, it is Thursday night. Please get the players that are playing tonight for the Ravens and for the Bengals out of your starting lineups. Please put those into their respective position. What's going on, Kyle? Sorry, just seeing your comments over here, fellas. I mean, you come in late. I mean, I love you. Got to get here early, Kyle. I know. Listen, it's snowing in Canada. Whatever. Blame it on the, as Milli Vanilli says, blame it on the rain, right?
All I can hope is the rink was hot. I know he had to be curling tonight. So.
He was curling. It is curling season up in Canada. For Steven, for Brian, I am Gator J. We are out until next week.
Yeah.